Welcome to episode 183 of Angela Watson's Truth for Teachers. I'm your host, Angela Watson, and I'm here to speak life, encouragement, and truth into the minds and hearts of educators and get you energized for the week ahead. Today, I'm going to be talking with Jessica Holdaway about how she set clear boundaries around her time and stopped bringing work home. Visit truthforteachers.com to get the transcript or find our new Truth for Teachers podcast community on Facebook. You can share your thoughts on the show there and reflect with other listeners in our private group. This episode is sponsored by ViewSonic Education. They're the creator of ViewBoard and My ViewBoard, which is the digital whiteboard and the digital whiteboarding app. Together, these two tools help teachers create engaging lessons from anywhere and then present them in the classroom. Search the internet, open your favorite apps, and play educational videos, all from your digital whiteboard. To learn more, visit viewsonic.com/education. So this is going to be the last episode of Season 10 of Truth for Teachers. I'm going to be taking a few weeks off, and I will be back with new episodes most likely in late January of 2020. I like to take breaks between seasons, and this past summer, I didn't take a break because I did that special summer series. So I'm going to take a little bit longer break here at the winter holidays. So I thought it would be really nice to close out this season with an interview that I did with a member of the 40-Hour Teacher Workweek Club whose name is Jessica Holdaway. She has a fantastic story about how she has found ways to balance home and work. I encourage you to listen for specific things that Jessica has done to create boundaries and consider how you could find approaches that work for you. We are not prescribing a one-size-fits-all approach here. Your teaching context and your life are not going to be just like hers, and every workload is different. Maybe bringing work home is the best or only possible way for you to get everything done, and that's fine. Please don't compare yourself to her and think, oh my gosh, I wish I could do that. My situation is impossible. I want Jessica's story to inspire you to think outside the box and to figure out a schedule that allows you to have clearer boundaries between home and work, and also more time for self-care. That's really the running theme here, as she realized she needed to take care of herself in order to be a great teacher. And so once she made up her mind, she made the time. She found ways to make it work. And I want that to be an inspiration to you, that if she can do it, you can do it too. Here's Jessica.
Well, I am a first grade teacher in Alpine, Utah. This is my 8th year in the classroom, so I've taught kindergarten for 5 years, and then I'm starting my 3rd year in first grade, which I absolutely love. In addition to teaching, I'm also a graduate student. I'm working on a master's in educational administration. Outside of my professional life, I've been married for 20 years to my husband, Dave, and we are the proud parents of 7 children. They range in age from 17 down to 2. Our oldest is a boy, and then we have 6 girls. So my plate is very, very, very full, but my family and my joy are my work just bring me a lot of joy. It's great.
I know that one of the ways that you balance home and work is by not bringing any school stuff home. So I'm wondering if you can share how you manage that. If you're not taking anything home, when does the work get done?
Well, when I went back to teaching after 10 years of being a stay-at-home mom, I was super stressed and overwhelmed, and I was very fortunate that year that the teacher next door was a seasoned professional who worked while having children, and she really understood the struggles with balancing my work and the rest of my life. And so one of the very first things she said to me was, don't take any work home. And I thought she was crazy, and I couldn't quite wrap my head around it. But I found out that she was right, because I soon realized that if I brought all my work home, it rarely got done anyway. And so then I have to just bring it all back to school the next day. And I had
That's right.
Right. And so finally I came up with this. I apologize for that. So finally I came up with a system to make that possible. So for me, I plan 1 month in advance, and I go to school the last Saturday morning of every month, and I plan out the entire upcoming month. And it takes a few hours for sure, but it's worth it because going on a Saturday when no one else is here, so I can't get distracted, and I can just get it done. So I pull out all the lesson plans, the copies, all the other resources and everything I need. And so it's just right at my fingertips. So then each Friday before I go home, I just pull out all the materials for the upcoming week. And because it's already done and prepared, it just takes a few minutes. And then I just print out my lesson plans and I'm good to go.
So you're going in to school one Saturday a month for a couple hours in order to plan so that you're not doing things all the time during the week.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so then that frees up my time before school, after school, during school to do the million other things that teachers often have to do.
Tell me about your hours before and after school. Do you go in early? Do you stay late?
So I don't, well, I should say that I have 3 of my own children who go to school at my school. So I can't come early every day, but I do usually come early one morning a week just because that works out with my schedule. And I like to be here nice and early because it's just quiet and gives me time to work. And then after school, we're required to stay for 30 minutes after school gets out. I stay for an hour, but after that hour is done, I stop where I am and go home.
So what time are you leaving usually?
I usually leave about 4 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, and I mean, yeah, there are occasional evenings, like sometimes if something big is happening, like parent-teacher conferences or something like that, I may stay later, like for an evening, but I really try to be conscious of the time that I'm spending at school, just because there's so much outside of school that I have to do as well.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that we talk a lot about in the club is about letting go of the good in order to make time for the great, and recognizing that you have to eliminate some things that are working fairly well in order to have the time needed for the stuff that really makes the biggest impact, because there just isn't enough time for all the good things that you could do. So we have to think about what are the truly great things that you should do. And I'm wondering if there's any specific tasks or other good things that you've stopped doing in order to simplify.
Oh my goodness. That is seriously the $1 million question, isn't it? Right? The whole I do good, better, best. And it's hard to say definitively because every teacher and circumstance is so different. But I will say that for a long time, I knew that I was a good teacher, quote unquote good teacher, but I was always tired and I was always stressed. And I realized that being a quote unquote good teacher came at a really high price for me. And it came at the expense of my family, my relationships, my health, mentally, physically, emotionally. And one day I just decided that that price was higher than I was willing to pay. So I sat down and I answered this question. If I were to thrive, not just survive, but thrive in my professional life, what would that look like? And then beyond that came the second and third question, which were, what would I have to do that I'm not doing to be able to thrive? And what do I need to stop doing to be able to thrive? And of course, like I said, every teacher's answers were different. But for me, for example, I realized that I was neglecting to take care of myself. And to thrive, I realized that was something I needed to do. So I made a list of should-do things that became non-negotiables, like exercise. That became something on my list because it gives me energy and helps me deal with these 6 and 7-year-olds all day and gives me greater focus for the day ahead. So I get up at 4 a.m. every day. I'm in the gym by 5. Another thing that helps me thrive is having a few minutes to chat with my colleagues, just a non-school related stuff. And so I build that into my actual schedule. It's on there that I will spend 15 or 20 minutes just visiting with my colleagues or my friends at school. I know that for me to thrive, it helps me to be completely organized well in advance. And so my planning system is a byproduct of that. And so I think when it comes down to it, everything, you have to remember that most everything that we do, I mean, of course, there's certain things that we have to do, just it's not a choice, but a lot of the things that we choose to do in the classroom is a choice. And it's not unlike when we evaluate like activities for our students to complete, we pick what will give us the most bang for our instructional buck in that instance. But this is all about choosing what will give you the most gain for your effort, And I think sometimes it's important to remember that just because something is easy to do doesn't mean it should always be done. And we shouldn't avoid doing things that are harder, maybe that take time and resources, because those things are necessary too. So it's about being intentional about what you choose to take on. So for example, for me, one of the things that helps me thrive as a teacher is strong relationships with my students and their families. And so for the last 2 summers, I have chosen to go to their homes and meet them before school starts. That's not because it was something super easy that I was told I had to do. It was because it cultivated strong relationships and opened the door for communication right from the start for me. So yes, it took time. Yes, it took resources, but it paid dividends in the end. And so we should be conscious of whether or not an activity supports whether or not we can thrive. And if it's something that drains our energy and our resources, maybe it's time to reevaluate. I know some people say, well, wow, that's a lot of focus on how you feel. What about your students? But really, the truth is that I've come to understand is that if you are thriving, your classroom culture and your students will be thriving too.
Wow, you made so many important points there. And I love how you're talking about really investing your time, that going to your student's home, for example, is obviously not the easiest, fastest way to start developing those relationships, but it's an investment. And hopefully, that pays off throughout the year. You have better understandings of your kids, their families, their home lives, and that for you makes it easier to do a good job later. I also like that you mentioned, talking about how you had to figure out what was helpful for you to thrive, because it's going to look different for each and every person. And I think that's one of the things that makes prioritizing really tricky, because there isn't anyone else who can decide for you what's most impactful and what's most important for you. It's something that every teacher has to evaluate. And I'm wondering if you can share your process for that. How do you figure out what's most important to get done?
Well, prioritizing is hard, but I try to simplify it as much as I can, just because I think sometimes it's easy to kind of overcomplicate things. And so that's where like the club has been super helpful for me, because the checklist system has been critical in helping me to prioritize. So what I do is when I sit down, it's just a complete brain dump on that checklist, and I write down everything. But when I can see it laid out in a weekly format, I can see what needs to be done before that meeting tomorrow, what can wait a few days. The key is getting everything down on the paper, no matter how small it is, because if we only write select things, then it's not really realistic representation of what needs to be done, and sometimes can cause problems later or delays later.
Mm-hmm. So you're writing everything down, and then you're prioritizing from there. Are there things on the list that you then decide you're not going to have time for, they're not going to actually happen? Do you weed tasks out at that point?
Absolutely. Because once I start, what I do is I'll write down everything, and then I'll number them. I'll say, okay, this is number one is high priority, and we number them. And then as I look at how much time I have and how many tasks I have, I can look at the number threes and you know what, maybe this is a great idea, but it will have to wait until next week or next month or next school year even sometimes, because I think sometimes we get a lot of great ideas and things we want to do and want to try, but I try to remember there's sort of a season for everything, and sometimes there's just too much on my plate to fit it all in at this time. But it doesn't mean it's not a great idea. It doesn't mean it can't happen later. It just means that right now is maybe not a good time.
That's a really good point, because I think if you're a creative person, or if teaching is also a hobby for you, not just your work, but there's aspects of it that you just genuinely enjoy, it's just super fun. It's really easy to get shiny object syndrome and think about all these fun, cool things you could be doing. And like, oh, this unit will be so much better if I made this. And oh, I could add this. And that's the fun part of the job. It's really hard to limit that sometimes.
It's very, very hard to limit it. But I find that if I'm able to limit that, and maybe I'll say, well, I wanted to improve these 3 units, but instead of doing all 3, maybe I'll pick 1. And so it's kind of my reward. Like, I can still work on that creative process, but I'm not tackling 3 things at one time. And that makes me more productive in the long run.
Yeah. And as you said, there's a season for everything. It doesn't all have to be done right away. And if you are a creative person, you're going to have more good ideas than you will ever have time to implement. And choosing the ones that you think are really going to make the biggest impact for kids, and the ones that you're really going to enjoy and that are just going to be super meaningful for everyone involved, it's helpful, because you're not necessarily telling yourself you don't get to do these other things or these things will never happen. It's just, it's not a priority right now. I think for many teachers, one of the hardest parts of creating these boundaries and deciding, what to do and what not to do, is giving yourself permission to find a stopping place So, there's not going to be a time, I'm sure when 4 o'clock comes for you, you don't look around and think, okay, everything is exactly the way I wanted and it's all done and there's literally nothing left for me to do. So I get to go home. I'm sure you're allowing yourself to leave some things incomplete. So I'm wondering, how has this been a challenge for you? How does this work for you?
Oh my heavens, yes. This is absolutely a challenge for two reasons. Number one, I'm a perfectionist by nature. I want it to just be perfect. And number two, I am one of those people that genuinely enjoys the process of planning and prepping to teach. So it's really easy for me to get caught up in the planning and lose track of time if I'm not consciously thinking about it. So what I do is I make my to-do list with the most urgent tasks and work my way down. I set a timer after school for 45 minutes. And then at that point, I reevaluate. And if I'm at a good stopping point, I give myself permission to go home. And if I'm not, I give myself an extra 15 minutes, and then I leave whether I'm done or not. And sometimes, like, if I'm really in the middle of something, I'll have to decide if it's worth coming in a little bit early the next morning or moving something around in my day the next day to kind of get it finished up. But more often than not, because I know that I only have this set amount of time, I tend to be really productive in that time. And so normally when I leave, yes, nothing is ever perfect the way you want it or completely done, but I feel good about what I've done. And I think that's an important thing. I think sometimes as teachers, we're always looking at what we haven't gotten done. And I think it's important to give yourself credit for what you have accomplished all day, which is a lot.
That's right. And if when you set that timer, that immediately, like there's something that happens in your brain that just makes you realize you don't have unlimited time. You can't just stay until it's all done. Like it does make you work faster. And the fact that you're really being intentional ahead of time about what tasks are most important and starting with the most important ones is so good, because it's a lot easier to find a stopping place when you've knocked the most important things out. How do you make the mental shift from work to home after school so that you're fully present with your students during the day, but then you're able to turn off your teaching brain and attend to the other aspects of life in the evenings?
Oh, that's a hard one. I know some people decompress like in the car on the way home, but for me, because 3 of my children attend the school where I teach, it makes it a bit trickier. So I chat with my kids on the way home about their day, and I greet my other kids when I get there. But then my kids know that I have 30 minutes. It's basically 30 minutes of downtime. When I arrive home from work, I go into my room and I shut the door. And, I might change and have a quick nap, or I might just sit there and enjoy the silence. Sometimes I chat with my husband or call a friend. It just depends on the day. But after that 30 minutes, I'm ready to be all in with my kids and all in with my family. And so it works really well. And it's kind of a routine that we have established in it, and it works great. And the 30-minute time frame is good for them too, because after a busy day, they just need to decompress. So we're all just kind of doing our own thing for about 30 minutes. And then we kind of resume with normal family stuff.
I love that. How did you explain this to them?
It's interesting because I have different kids of different ages. So obviously my teenagers really understand what my job entails and how hard I work. And I just said, I just need a half an hour to just attend to some things, and then we'll move on with whatever we need to do. And they understood. And my little kids, it's interesting because I have 2 that are still in daycare, and so I don't see them all day. So when I come home and I just say hi and then I kind of disappear, I just said, well, I'm going to go upstairs and have a quick nap. And they said, okay. They understand that. But by the time that timer that I've set for them goes off, they're ready to come and engage with me, and I'm ready to engage with them. But they've been really, really great about understanding that I just need a little bit of time so that I'm able to be the best mom I can be to them, because after being inundated with lots of responsibilities and things and children all day, just need a minute to take a deep breath.
Yeah, and it's amazing how kids can adapt to any kind of structure that you set up for them. If you set the expectation that as soon as you walk in the door, you are available to meet their every need, and they're all asking you things and you're doing things, that's what they'll expect. If you teach them that, when we get home, this is our routine. Everybody has a half hour to go do their own thing. And then we start doing family stuff again. They're able to do that. And I think that's really awesome that you have done that in your family.
And I know that my kids, especially my older kids, they see a difference. Like if I've had that 30 minutes or for some reason something has happened and I haven't, they can tell a difference, and I can tell a difference. And I just think I'm a much better mom when I do that.
And you're also getting that time for you first thing in the morning too, right? Because you mentioned that you were exercising.
Yes. And so I go to the gym. And so, yes, that's the time when I just kind of, when I get up really early and I go to the gym and I come home, and I usually have time for a quick breakfast and to read something, and just quietly decompress, and then the chaos ensues with getting everyone up and ready for school. But I've tried really, really hard to create those times in my day when I have a few minutes to quietly sit and reflect or take care of myself in some way. And it really, really pays dividends later on in my day when things get particularly hectic, because I really have done what I needed to do to just feel centered and focused.
You'll get to hear more from Jessica in just a moment, but I want to take a quick break from our interview to let you know about a special opportunity that's coming up soon. You probably know about the 40-Hour Teacher Workweek Club if you listen to the podcast very much. That's a full-year program, and it used to be offered beginning each July and each January. But I'm doing something new this time. The full-year program is only going to be offered in the summer now. And in January, I'm creating a 6-week version called 40-Hour Fast Track. If you want support with productivity, streamlining, and focusing on what matters most, but you don't want to make a big year-long commitment to the club, especially in the middle of the school year, 40-Hour Fast Track might be the better solution for you. It is a condensed and less expensive version of the club materials that's designed to get you results quickly. I've taken the strategies that club members say have been the most impactful, and I've included only those resources in 40-Hour Fast Track. The opportunity to join 40-Hour Fast Track will be December 29th to January 9th. So if you miss the summer opening and you don't want to wait until July to start making changes to your workload, check out the Fast Track program. There's no reason to just struggle through the whole school year in survival mode when you can get step-by-step support to create big changes through small tweaks to your habits in a really short 6-week time period. You're guaranteed to trim 3, 5, or even 10 plus hours off your work week right away. If you're interested, go to 40htw.com to learn more. That's 40htw.com. Now, back to my interview with Jessica. She's going to share some specific strategies she learned through the club that helped her get better balance and stop bringing work home. I love how really intentional you've been about all these different things that allow you to really be your best as a teacher and in every other role that you play. How has the 40-Hour Teacher Workweek Club helped you get to this place that you're at now in terms of staying on top of things?
Oh my goodness. I'm the first to admit that I've been a member for more than a year, but there's a lot of the club still left for me to explore, and I'm working on that. But that said, the biggest mindset shift for me was just using that time throughout the day to be productive, and understanding that a few minutes here and a few minutes there can add up to big productivity if you are organized and intentional with your time. And so that has just been huge for me. And I don't know, it's always one of those things you think, why did I never think of that before, But it really, it totally changed the way that I look at being productive and managing all the things,
Are there any other mindsets or habits that you developed through the club that have made a big impact for you?
Oh my goodness. Yes, the filing system. And I just call it a drawer system because I use drawers, but that has made a huge difference. So like every teacher, we're inundated with paperwork from the moment we get to school to the moment we leave. And so those drawers and that filing system that sit on my desk, they're labeled and they keep me on track. So when I get papers, I know exactly where it needs to go. when I can get to it, and it has kept my desk clutter-free. And I find that when my desk is clutter-free, that helps my mental state, and I'm feeling much more able to tackle what I need to tackle without having to wade through the clutter on my desk. I have 6 drawers on my desk. They're labeled today, this week, grade, file, read, and reference. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones that I use. And whenever a paper, anyone can hand me something, or I grab it from my mailbox and I just put it in the right drawer, and then I always know where to find things. Mm-hmm. And so it's super helpful. And that today drawer always gets emptied before I go home. And then this week one gets emptied every Friday. And then, of course, as we go with grading and things like that. But it's been so, so helpful. Because I think sometimes when our physical space is uncluttered, it helps our mind to be uncluttered. And it really helps us to focus on what the most important things are, mm-hmm. and what needs to be done.
What's something that you wish every teacher understood about reducing their workload and having better balance?
I just wish everyone understood that it really, honestly, is possible to be a teacher, to find a balance that's comfortable or workable for you, and really thrive in your classroom and in your life. For so many teachers, we're living our life kind of in survival mode, thinking it's just what teachers do. And it's sort of this rut that we can sometimes fall into. But I think when people are willing to slow down and say, hey, look, this isn't working for me, and really think through the systems and the processes in your classroom and in your life, you might be surprised to discover that there is a better way, or could be a better way.
Thanks for listening. Remember, you can go to 40htw.com and learn all about the 40-hour Fast Track program if you're interested in joining us in January. I'll be back with new podcast episodes in a couple weeks. Have a wonderful end to your 2019. You can do this. And remember, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be worth it.